welcome everyone to this new episode of Good Steps Conversation. And today we have the privilege of having Colonel Navinder Narang again with us. So, in the earlier episode, we had spoken with him about his journey in the defense, in the corporate segment, and now he is doing something new, addressing one of the critical challenges facing India. We'll talk more about that here and during the conversation. So, firstly, welcome Colonel Navinder Narang. Thank you so much, sir, for being here.
Thank you, Preeti, and thank you, Good Steps, for having me here once again. It's been a while, and lots have happened during this gap. I have successfully found my deeper meaning in life, and I have moved on to start a new initiative, a startup called Avaran. And this happens to be an interesting blue ocean category kind of initiative, which has a lot of promises for the country. We will speak more as we go on. Thank you so
Sure,
much for having me here.
sure. So, like in Good Steps, we talk about land, water, and air. And we have been hearing a lot of work happening around and conversations happening around waste and pollution. But among these discussions, majority of it has been either focused on vehicles or plastic for that matter. So today we are
Yes.
going to talk about one thing which is not so much spoken about, but something which is significantly impacting you and me as individuals, which is the construction and demolition waste, which is getting generated in these cities. India is growing rapidly with buildings coming up and coming down. So what
Yes.
actually happens, sir, to the rubble which after a demolition?
Yes, very pertinent question, and very few people really think about it even, and including the real estate developers who get on these brownfield projects which involve a lot of demolition. So the focus is to create the new building rather than what really happens to the demolition which is already undertaken. So on that score, I will give you certain data figures which will really, resound with you and the viewers. So, firstly, as per the government data,
Mhm.
there is almost between 150 million tons of construction and demolition waste to about 500 million tons waste every year which is produced. Now, why I am giving the wide range is this is the wide range in the data itself. So, one big worry is even this range is so wide that the government
Correct.
is really not aware exactly about how much waste it really comes. And because it is so diversified, so differently located, and very difficult to monitor, makes the task all more difficult for the government. And
Absolutely.
it has got various ramifications. This waste which is created, it is not only the waste which is going to affect the landfill, or you can say the uh, placement of this rubble or the concrete waste. It's also the impact on groundwater, on the toxic elements which are part of the waste, and also air pollution in a major sense. One of the major reasons of the air pollution in NCR is also attributed to the humongous concrete waste lying around wherever there are construction sites available.
Yeah, in fact, in all the metros, if we see anywhere between 15 to 30% based on the latest research which is there is coming from the road dust or the construction dust, which is actually a surprising data because normally either the vehicles and industries or the burning of things were being attributed as the reason for air pollution. But now we are seeing
Yes.
in the construction which gets left out
Yes.
not gets constructed actually has a lot of impact on the air we all are breathing currently.
Correct. And one more aspect is on the recycling element. So normally what happens is traditionally in our country, the recyclers or the scrap dealers or the small time players who collect these waste material, everybody picks up the waste which is more valuable to them, which can create that ROI for them. So unfortunately what has happened is over the years, even in the construction waste, the elements which are more lucrative, like the metal, they are
Mm-hmm.
easily extracted and taken away. So I'm not saying that 100% construction waste is lying around,
Mm-hmm.
but the less valuable part, which doesn't give them the returns, is of course not going to be picked up by them. You know, though government has now made it, a norm to create more recycling plants of the construction and demolition waste and handle that waste. So, but it is not really streamlined to an extent that it becomes valuable for every player in the chain.
Mm-hmm.
That is one major element. Also, these construction material, the configuration or the constituent of this material is such that if properly routed to the right recycling plant,
Mm-hmm.
it can lead as much as another 50% of that waste being reused in some element, either as road paver blocks or the foundation elements, or mixing with the aggregate and creating new aggregate for less sensitive areas like flooring, like grounding, all those purposes. So it can be
So,
reused in a manner which comes back to the construction industry. Now let me explain how it further helps.
so before that,
If whether Yeah,
just for common people, for everybody, for each of us to understand who don't understand how this
yeah,
thing actually work. So, one is the metal part which you mentioned, which of course has a value, whether it's in form of e-waste or whether it's in case of construction waste. But when it comes to the other voluminous waste, which is the concrete, the broken bricks, and all that,
yes.
so what exactly is can be created out of that? So you mentioned a couple of them, like it can be used for road paver blocks and all. So one question which
Yes.
I would ask, and which may be of concern, is will it be as strong or will it give as much as performance versus when we are using a virgin material there? Or how does the matrix there work?
So as I was telling, yeah, you're right. So as I was telling, it doesn't have to be used in the main, the kind of construction flooring element or the element which is created afresh for buildings where it
Okay.
matters.
Mm-hmm.
But it can certainly be used as part of the pillars on the basement, on the ground level. It can be used to make the grounding of that entire building where
Mm-hmm.
the base of the building is being created. It can be used for as an aggregate itself, as a
Mm-hmm.
mix of aggregate to
Okay.
cover the surroundings. It can be used for roads, for bridges, for other elements. So there are many uses where the recycling element is used. In fact, in the Western countries, almost 100% of such waste is being recycled. And should I give
Wow.
you a surprise?
Mm-hmm.
In India, in India, only 1% of this waste is being currently recycled.
And what's the reason for that?
So that is
The
the
bad.
big gap. Yeah. So the reason for this is not one. It is various. As I told you, one, there is no willingness to pick up such material. Number
Mm-hmm.
one. Number two, the norms or the rules for recycling have just about come up, and they are not being enforced in a manner which would dissuade people from doing things.
Right.
Number three, which I'll tell you, is there are a lot of ghost recycling things which are happening in the country. So what happens is
Okay.
people do things on paper. People declare
Okay.
that they have disposed the waste and all that. They manage the certificate from the landfill also, but there's no proof. There's no proof of this thing, and that is where Avaran comes in. We step into it because I realize this gap of traceability is the basic gap which affects the entire chain. Even
Mm-hmm.
though there may be compliance norms, even though there may be reporting norms, but unless this link is established as to
Mm-hmm.
where, how much material originated, and how it went, who transported it, how much was transported, how much was recycled, and so on. So the entire chain has been created into a very smart chain. And if you want me to further explain about it, I can do that. However, if there are any other questions before that, I'll be able to handle that.
So you mentioned about that it is not being recycled. Only 1% is what we are recycling. So then where does the remaining 99% go to?
Very interesting. So imagine you are a scrap dealer or a person who's collecting some waste. So let me go one step further back. When a developer demolishes the site, he gets some clear days before he starts the construction because his main eye or focus is on the construction going to start. So he
Right,
wants this waste to be removed as fast as possible, right?
right.
So he contacts the existing players in the field who are well versed with the norms and all that. So there's a whole intricate mechanism of transporters, of scrap dealers, of collectors, of labor, of if you require cranes, if you require other specialist equipment, all those equipment. So there's a whole chain which is already well-oiled machinery in India, which
Hmm.
functions to make the demolition happen, and that's a very right and nice process. The problem
Right.
starts thereafter. The
Okay.
problem is how much of it is really then taken to the recycling plant? Who has got the willingness to take it to the recycling plant? Who benefits from that? Why should he do that? Are there loopholes for him not to do that and get away with it? Yes. So if you give an easy escape route to anything,
Hmm.
it slips away in that abilities. So that was a challenge when we went to designing Avaran's protocol, which is a digital platform, how to make
Hmm.
it happen so that it doesn't disturb the ecosystem. I think
Okay.
that's what our intent is. So you were asking about where does it go and how does it impact. So the rest of the waste, when people pick it up, the
Hmm.
easiest is to put it away where it will not be seen. So you
Okay.
have jungles, you have rivers, you have ponds. Of course, there is one good mechanism also which is there. Time to time, government notifies certain landfill sites
Okay.
which they want to be filled up with rubble or with something because
Okay.
they have to
Okay.
level it up for further infrastructure plans. So that
Hmm.
is one good mechanism. But even there, what is happening is the entire load gets filled there. So that load also exists lot of hazardous elements like paints, oils, such like things which are along with the demolition rubble. So there is
Hmm.
no effort taken to segregate those toxic elements away. So if you do not know, there was a big problem in one of the areas which were landfilled and created as a as an infrastructure hub for call centers in Mumbai
Right.
towards the suburb side. I won't name
Hmm.
it because it will reveal the brand. I don't want to do that. So there, even 5 years after the construction, the fresh construction, there were hazardous gases coming out of that landfill.
It's very much in news somewhere or the other these days. I think people are facing that, and yeah.
Correct. So it has to be very well orchestrated, very well designed process. And again, time and again, I come to the thing, a thing which can be proven. There has to be a
Hmm.
traceability element. There has to be an evidence attached to every action in the chain. That's how things will come. So today, there are a lot of things working well for India, the UPI, the Aadhaar and all. They're working well because you can really have that evidence. You can have that verification. You don't,
Right.
you have a trust layer.
Right.
That's what Avaran again was to do, was create a trust layer between the waste and the disposal.
Okay. So you also mentioned about other than air pollution, this is also polluting the water at the ground level, the water which we drink. So
Yeah.
how does that happen?
So imagine if this entire waste was being thrown into a river,
Mm-hmm.
and again the toxic element which I mentioned to you. Now those
Right.
toxic elements are getting somewhere mixed with the water, and you do
Mm-hmm.
not know where this water is leading to, which village,
Right.
which city, which area, which zone, and how it
Mm-hmm.
is being consumed. So that is
Okay.
the risk. That is the risk. And also, if it gets into a landfill
Mm.
in the toxic form, and there is some groundwater which is running down that landfill, some water which is recharging the groundwater from that landfill. That entire area around will get contaminated.
Okay. So, of course, you mentioned that a lot of other countries are recycling a majority of that. I believe Japan and Netherlands being one of those, a few of those countries who are able to do that. So, do we have especially the toxic elements which you mentioned? So, do we have the infrastructure challenge here? We don't have adequate, do we have the technology which we don't have, how to remove it in a more better way so that it brings in value to the recycler also? Or is it uh, what is stopping us other than, of course, the enforcement and the policy part, which, of course, you individuals, we don't have any direct say on that, but to understand the situation. So, uh, what is the broader picture, and more importantly, what can I if sometime I'm going for renovating my house, or somebody is renovating their home, or for any other matter in our society, some work is being done. So, is there some step we can take to at least uh, reduce the construction and demolition stuff which we become a part of?
Very nice question. So there are two questions built into one. Firstly, is the how do we lack any infrastructure capability? Uh, Both yes and no. Government has started taking actions, so the technology is available. Now, how quickly this translates into the right capacity creation is the question. For example, Mumbai, as compared to Delhi, is lagging behind quite a lot in the number of recycling plants it has, and that
Okay.
itself gives a kind of a green signal for people to use that as an excuse and try and find the via media. That is one problem, because and as you are examining this point, I would like to point out that there are tier 2 cities in India which are rapidly progressing. You can see
Of
Jaipur, you
course.
can see Indore, you can see places like Pune. Pune is now no longer a small place. So all these places are expanding very fast, and the recycling capacity is far behind. That is
Mhm.
one area which the government and the regulators are looking into it, but they probably need to do it in a more fast track manner. Perhaps adding some incentives to the recyclers and also to the collectors. See,
Mhm.
merely giving to the recyclers will only solve one part of the problem, but the collectors are not going to be incentivized in some manner, and they're not going to be benefited. And at the end of the day, they're going to lose interest. And how would that entire thing reach the recycler?
Mhm.
That is another. And if the recycler has to elongate their arm to collect, that adds on another layer of responsibility to that. So it's a very complex thing which needs to be sorted out in time.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
And the second question again, you asked me another question was,
Yeah, what can individuals like me
yeah, what
and
can
others
individuals
can do?
do? Yes. So I think it's time for us as Indians to start thinking what happens to this waste when it leaves our house or leaves our building. That's when you start thinking and you start questioning, you'll automatically get more answers, and the system will respond to this requirement. Just like the system has responded by creating those fast food chains and fast food deliveries and so many things, the system will respond automatically to this demand which is coming, and the demand needs to be created by the citizens by acting more responsible. That is the first thing. Second thing is, once they undertake such activities, they must ensure with their scrap dealers to see that these are delivered to the right recycler. It's too early for me to promise that Avaran will find a solution for them. But yes, sooner or later, we would definitely want to be in that space as well. So that is a space, a micro space, which when adds up creates a lot of value and volume for the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think even if somebody with a good intention tries to give it, but if the chain is not complete or chain is broken in that location where they are a part of, so the issue doesn't get resolved, the issue doesn't get
Yeah.
addressed there.
Yeah. One
Okay.
more thing I'll just point out. It's a very common practice in India. Whenever anybody undertakes some renovation or some demolition activity in their building or house or shop or somewhere, the first thing they do is find a person, give him some money, and tell him, "Yeah, isko rato raat nikal de kahin." You know, so that is the mentality which we have to get rid of ourselves, because it's no more thing which is acceptable in the larger interest of the planet and the future generations. We have to take it upon ourselves to become more responsible.
And I think that also calls for an opportunity for those who are into civil construction and interiors and all, that they also, if they also come out with certain proposals on that, how these items can be recycled and used in the home itself, which they are renovating it. Because then that will create a circular thing at a lot of different levels. So it doesn't need to leave that place.
Absolutely,
I don't know
absolutely.
how
Because
practical that is, but that is something which comes to my mind.
Priti, you brought a very valid point. That's how big things take shape from smaller things, and smaller
Mhm.
footprint is something which is the right, I would say, the brand or the nomenclature for such an action. Uh, because see, I'll just cite one example. Supposing you have a problem with getting rid of demolition waste, and you're worried about the penalty coming from the municipality, right? And you really do not know what. Don't worry. Wait for a day, contact those authorities, get to know who are the authorized recyclers, get them to come to you, and at least take some steps forward. Don't be so scared in the first instance that you opt for the easier option, which will, satisfy everybody in the chain, but then not really solve the problem. In fact, it will increase the problem. So I think conscientious behavior and a very focused kind of activity around this will make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, sir, for sharing all this. I'm sure a lot of us don't actually talk about it or don't realize it, the kind of impact it's actually having on the air, land, and water around us. But now seeing how the rainfalls are leading to floods in cities like Mumbai, and there, of course, and the water issue. On one side, we have the scarcity, and on the other side, we have the contamination. Of course, air pollution has been a discussion, has been something which people have become aware in the last 1 year. But then these are the small actions, small steps we can take how to dispose the things in the responsible manner. Check in your locality. In fact, if you're in Mumbai, BMC has a helpline where you can contact them and you can get the details of who are the authorized recyclers in case you're renovating or some renovation, etc., is going in your locality. And yeah, I mean, yes, let's start taking the responsibility on our end and let's bring in the change. How we got the 10-minute deliveries for the convenience. Now it's the thing about the land, water, air we eat, drink, and breathe. So let's make them also better. So thank you so much
Oh,
for
yes,
joining us
definitely.
here. And all the best for your venture, and hope we get people get a lot of other suggestions and the ways how they can responsibly handle that. And in case anyone who is there who basically repurposes these elements, especially for the individuals when they're going for renovating their homes, please do write to us. You can write directly to me, Preeti at the rate smallerfootprint.co. So that will help other people in your city to reach out to you, and it will help us create the circular use of these elements in our own smaller nearest ecosystems. So thank you so much and have a good day, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.